So welcome everybody to our second part of the self-belief series. I'm having so much fun with this self-belief series, and thank you to all of you that came on the session live last time, those who are on live this time, but also all the people who watched the recording. And I've received a lot of great feedback by email, so I really appreciate your comments and your questions. So keep it up. I think that this topic is very exciting for a lot of people. So today I'm absolutely thrilled to introduce you all to Hayley Grosser. Hayley and I met in person back in Victor Harbor quite a while ago now at a retreat through the Farm Owners Academy. And it was one of those meetings that you just don't forget, where two souls come together and there's a connection, and then you're changed forever. Do you remember that, Hayley, when we first met?
Yeah, I absolutely do. And I completely agree that there's moments in time where you just connect and you just know that, I don't know, there's more to the connection than you can really put your finger on at the time.
It's so true. It's a feeling at the time. You feel something and you don't have an explanation for it. And once you've had that a few times and you start to become aware of that, I think that when you do have that feeling come, it's exciting because you know that you don't know, and that's exciting. I think that that's really important too. When we're talking about self-belief, I think that a lot of people are looking for certainty and they can't trust themselves or believe in themselves unless they have a plan and unless everything's falling into place. But the more I learn and the more I experience, the more I realize that uncertainty and not knowing is the excitement of life. And if we can tap into that, then there is so much more available to us than us holding on so tight to what we already know and how things already are. And I guess that was an example of that when we first met, was just that knowing, but didn't know what it was, just knew it was something, and it was something that felt good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that knowing, like you're talking about, and trusting, feeling so in control, but what you realize is that when you actually let go of that constructive control and allow everything else in, you realize that how much more there is beyond control and how much more we were actually missing out on because we were channeling into one thing rather than actually opening our eyes and seeing everything that's around us and all of the actual good things that are coming to us, rather than thinking that we're the ones who have to control that and push that or find that.
And the focus on the control is the distraction. Like, while we're trying to make things happen and we're so hell-bent on doing it that way, we're actually missing from just turning around and seeing something else that's just right in front of us because we're just too focused on that thing.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I'll jump into that, because when you came on a Soul Pleaser retreat, there was a big shift for you, and this quite often happens, the combination of doing the Soul Pleaser program and then going to retreat, and it's always divine timing. So you're always in the program at the perfect time for you and at the retreat at the perfect time for you, and with the perfect people and in the perfect environment. We ended up with such a small, intimate group of people in that particular retreat. Can you remember what it was that you finally began to let go of as a result of that retreat?
Yeah, so for me, it was time. I let go of all time, I suppose, because I didn't realize how much time was controlling me and how much focus I had on a lack of time and how I couldn't get everything done and how I was trying to do everything and too much, and all of everything that goes with time and what we perceive it to be. It was crazy.
It's amazing. And it's no wonder, if you think about the lives that we lead and the conditioning that we've had and what we've observed, that a lot of our self-worth comes from doing. I was absolutely a doing addict. In fact, more specifically, I was a workaholic because other things got neglected as a result of me always working. And that came from growing up and observing a strong work ethic, but also getting rewarded at a very young age for doing something well and working hard and trying hard. I was always the teacher's pet. And it was Ainsley said something very funny at our most recent retreat is, I was talking about trying too hard, and she won the award at her school for the try hard. So it just really summarized, what so many of us do. And because we get a reward for trying our best, we get grades for our academic results, but we also get some sort of score on how hard we try. And there's no doubt that we want people to do their best. But if you have a personality where you take that to the extreme, where then your self-worth depends on it, you grow up and you add a family to that and business to that and being a wife and, trying to maintain your health. And there's just so many boxes to tick that in the end, you are just doing too much and there is no space for being. So it's ironic, but also perfect that you would become aware of your obsession with time when we went to a retreat where, remember that we didn't have a clock and I didn't have a structure and I didn't tell you what time we were going to do anything. Can you remember how much that made you panic?
Yeah. Oh, and I can relate to everything you said about like that high achiever, like having to achieve all the time, but also having to create what I was doing all of the time. Like I couldn't even sit down and just sit on the couch. I'd be like, right, what's next? I need to be doing something. Surely there's something to do, because a lot of my worth was tied up with how much I was doing. I grew up with that construct of, if you're sitting on the couch, if you're doing nothing, then you're lazy or you're useless or, all of those things. So for me, like as soon as I sat down, it was like, all of that guilt and I suppose shame come back around that. And then going on that retreat, I was like, oh, wow, completely challenged me to the absolute max, because I was used to having so much structure. But then getting into it, and it didn't really take too long to actually feel relief and feel calmness from the lack of structure. Like I don't know, it was like permission that I could actually let go of time. But what I realized was that I was trying to fit too much into my time, as opposed to fitting in, what was important at the time and prioritizing that, but also forgetting about the fact that I wasn't feeling good in any of it. So in no point in my day was I actually feeling good. So, time had me bound, and then I was doing a lot of things because I should do them, rather than just, doing what I wanted to do and doing what makes me feel good, which then allowed me to, come at life from a whole different angle.
And, that's so tied into the self-belief piece, because if we believe that we have to achieve and we have to please others and we have to do what we think we should do and we should be busy all the time, because if we just relax, then we're lazy, then we don't get any time to discover who we are. And I reflect and I look at addiction. I look at all kinds of addiction, because my other addiction apart from work was food. So I was so blocked from my emotions, which is really the discovery of who you are. If you're going to discover who you are, you need to at first understand that you're an emotional being, and therefore actually gives your emotions some credit, because I was taught to push emotion away and keep emotion out of the equation, and had been told that women were too emotional. And so, when you want to achieve, you will just become whoever you need to be able to get where you want to go. But I embrace the fact that I feel big now. I realize that feeling emotions in a big way is a part of who I am, which is really, really exciting. But when I reflect on addiction, I know that a lot of women and men have come to me about addiction to food, to alcohol, to work, to TV, to scrolling, all sorts of things. It's this denial of ourselves, and it's this distraction of ourselves. And what's really missing is a connection with who we really are. And so this is how we numb ourselves. And food was a big one for me as well. So I would restrict my food intake, but then if I made a mistake and got it wrong and ate the wrong thing, I'd be like, stuff it, and then just binge on that till the packet was gone and try and find another one, and that's soul destroying, because that's another thing to beat yourself up about. So there's just this whole cycle of how we end up doing and avoiding being.
Yeah, absolutely. And that doing and the hardness that you have on yourself for not doing, or if you didn't achieve something, or it just plays out so hard. I think, like, I was so incredibly hard on myself if I wasn't achieving, and felt like I was a failure to myself and to my kids if I wasn't being the person that everybody thought I should be and achieving the things like I was super mum. Yeah. And, being up there going, yeah, I'm the person who can juggle business and life and the farm and everything that involves, and I have to smash it at the same time and be like over excelling in that situation, when it's just like, no.
So rather than knowing yourself, you were trying to be this impossible thing that I guess you thought other people wanted you to be. And I love the fact that you use the word guilt, because I think so many of us experience guilt when we behave a certain way, think a certain thing, do or don't do a certain thing. And guilt was introduced when we were young, the first time that we were told, don't do that, or you shouldn't do that. And I can remember quite vividly my first memory of guilt. And it was, I started being a teacher pet right from the word go. So I finished school really young. So I must have been very young when I started school, maybe 4 or 3. And I remember I could tie my shoelaces, and this boy was having trouble tying his shoelaces. So I was trying to be helpful, but I was also trying to show the teacher that I knew how to tie my shoelaces, because I wanted her approval as well. And I, showed him how to do it, but said something like, you're doing it wrong. You should do it like this. Anyway, she just completely, the teacher just like got really mad with me, which was the last thing I wanted, because I wanted her to think I was awesome. And I just in that moment felt so guilty, and yet my intention was pure. And the teacher didn't do anything wrong either, because the teacher was just doing what she was doing. But from a very early age, just a simple input like that gave me a taste of guilt. And then I just built my guilt bank over time as I didn't meet expectations that I had on myself. And on reflection, the expectations I had on myself were much larger than what anybody outside of me had ever put on me. But it was my perception that that's what they needed from me. Can you relate to that?
Oh, absolutely. And that, that for me, like my first, I suppose, taste of guilt for me was when I was young, like on the farm, in that guilt around me being a girl. And in those times, it was obviously the boys that stayed home and did the farm. And because I wasn't necessarily like on the farm and doing the things on the farm, that guilt around what was expected of my parents to do that. Yeah. And so it was really interesting that played out, because, I had so much guilt around not, what it meant to be on a farm in terms of working and not working in terms of that. And then what actually surrounded what constituted hard work, because mum and dad were very much, the traditional farmers of those generations that worked from daylight to dark. They didn't take holidays. They worked so hard to give us everything. So if I wasn't doing that, or they'd come home and I was sitting on the couch and like I said, they would, my dad would say something to me, it triggered immense guilt inside of me, because I didn't really know either what that expectation was. It was just placed on myself because I wasn't actually, doing what they were doing at the time.
And it's the beginning of conditional love. So it's the beginning of getting a list of conditions where I feel accepted, I feel loved, I feel safe if I X, Y, Z. And we just get this big list of things that we, really feel like we have to achieve to be able to feel good about ourselves. So we're given conditional love because we're all human. So that's not our parents' fault. We're doing it with our own kids as well. We say that we love them unconditionally, but we love them more when they're doing what we like. And we can get a little bit irritated when they don't. So that is the human condition. But there is so much more available to us. And I knew for many, many years that I had a self-worth issue. I read every book under the sun about it, but nothing changed until I discovered who I really am. So let's go back to the beginning of your self-belief story. I believe that when we pop out into the world, it's like, da-da, I'm here, I love me, I'm awesome. And then something happens fairly soon we go, oh, am I not that awesome? And it depends on your memory, and it depends on the size of the emotion attached to the event. But when do you think you got the idea that maybe you weren't as awesome as you knew you were when you first dropped in?
It was funny because I was only talking about this with somebody the other day, which is how it is. But I remember when I was a kid, I was probably, very loud and very boisterous and liked to have a lot of fun. And I suppose my initial memory around that was getting told to be quiet, to, stop doing that, don't be so loud, settle down, like all of those kind of things. And, I can see it in our second child. It's exactly the same actually now.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting that being, children should be seen and not heard, that keep quiet. You don't put yourself out, in front of, you don't be an outwards kind of child, because that comes with repercussions. And, don't be annoying, don't be, all of those, things that come with being a little bit loud and being a little bit, I suppose, full of life.
And what did you do to adapt to that? Did you continue to be yourself, or can you remember that you did sort of adapt to that feedback?
Oh, definitely adapted that feedback. And I would be really conscious about saying anything at all or saying very much. And it really taught me not to speak my truth. Yeah. So I would just keep it in there. I would never speak my truth. If somebody said something to me, I would never stand up for myself. I would just take it on the chin and just basically not say anything. So even if someone was putting me down, I would just say nothing and just walk away pretty much, and, act like it wasn't affecting me.
And how did that feel?
Oh, terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible.
I see that now when people first come to me before we start to work together, and I remember it as well. And when they're so scared to be themselves, what I explain is what I've experienced is that to deny yourself and not be yourself is actually the most painful way to be. Like, the other thing about that meeting when we first met that really ties into what you're saying now is what I knew about you was that you were this bright, shining light that was hiding. And you have a story about being in the dressing room, I believe, one day shopping for clothes. Do you remember this one about hiding your light? Do you mind sharing that one?
Yeah, so I have always probably struggled with weight a little bit, and it's, coming from that space of hiding. But after our second boy, I was really healthy, and I put my priorities first in terms of exercise, and I actually was quite slim and quite fit and quite strong. And I remember going shopping in Adelaide with a couple of girlfriends, and we're in the change room at Country Road, and I put a dress on and it was quite firmly fitting. And I remember just hearing the girls kind of just whispering, behind their backs or behind my back. And I kind of looked at them and I'm like, what are you whispering about? And they're like, oh, I can't believe that you can wear that dress and wear a G-string and you can't even see the lines. And, for most people, they would be initially like, oh, excellent, that's fantastic. I'm absolutely rocking it. But what my mind did was push me back, and it pushed me back to hide behind my weight. And from that point, I found that my weight slowly increased because I basically pulled back from life and went, I can't be that different person to somebody else because I'm not allowed to step out and be that person, because like I said before, there's repercussions for people who show that they're doing well or show that they're, being something different. So I then pulled back and, basically become what my friends were again, because I couldn't handle stepping out and being in front of someone that was being taken notice of.
Yeah, and being different. And you didn't want to make them feel bad. I remember experiencing that myself, is that when we are empathic and we feel other people's emotions, we can be mistaken to think that we're responsible for other people's emotions. And so when we don't make ourself a priority, which is that alignment with our true self, then we are just at the whim of how other people feel. And in that situation, to make them feel better, you dimmed your own light. And I think that we can all be guilty of doing that, because it's easier to keep the peace if we don't shine too brightly, because people can feel threatened by that. But what I want to say to you, if anybody's listening to this and feels like they could break out and really start to live their full potential, but they realize that that might be what's holding them back, is that you end up being this wonderful example to people who are ready for it. Not everybody. Some people are not ready for it and they will resent you for becoming your best self. But ultimately, this is the way we can help people the most, because I love helping people. I love it. Like, it's my big love. And I know you do as well, Hayley. But what I've realized is that the best way for me to help others, is to help myself. And so if I'm being my best self, then that is the great example for everybody else. So why did you think, oh, I think I'll do the Soul Pleaser program? What were you thinking? What was going on for you before you decided to do that?
So for me, I had started my, I suppose, foot in the water when it came to doing personal development. And I had a lot of things going in my head, but I couldn't put them in a logical order. So I couldn't kind of make them all mix together. So when I joined Soul Pleaser, it was like this is why that's so, and this is why I know that. So it put everything in place for me as to why things were so, basically, and just allowed me to get a really good insight as to what was actually going on and why I was continually stepping back. And I felt like I'd take 2 steps forward and then 1 step back and then 2 steps forward and 1 step back in what I was doing. And so it just made perfect sense to me as to, I don't know, it brought in that, I suppose, completeness about what I was learning.
Yeah. And I think having it logically step by step really helps you to unveil what you're ready for, make that shift, and then move on to the next, because the information is just growing. You know, when I started Soul Pleaser in 2016, quite a few eyebrows were raised. And obviously I've changed as well. But since then, talking about the soul and talking about spirituality has just, exploded. And so it is an open conversation. But sometimes it can be very confusing. You tune into this and you tune into that, and you just get bits and pieces of information and you think, oh, yes, I'm going to do that. But next minute, you're just back into your old pattern. And I love the way that you said that it really made it clear for you to understand why you do what you do. And I think that that is really where the work is that for us to really have self-belief, we have to understand ourselves. So we need to start with where we're at. And the first step, which I think people find so difficult and so challenging, is accepting where they're at. I get so many people saying, well, I refuse to accept where I am because then I won't change. But it's actually the opposite of that. That absolute letting go and being okay with the circumstances exactly as they are is the starting point. If you were putting something into your sat nav, asking Siri where to go, she needs to know where you are first. Otherwise, you can't get the directions. And it's the same with us. We just need to look at where we're at and just be totally okay with it. Because when we push against that, we get more of it. And so, that awareness that you had about, shining, covering up your light, being addicted to doing, thinking that certain behaviors like being out there were not okay, were preventing you from being able to take that leap forward. What is it that you love about who you have become? How would you describe the changes that have happened to you as you've discovered yourself and love her and accept her?
I think really just the ability to speak my truth and speak up. And just be unapologetic about who I am and what I'm doing, and not having to justify to anyone why I'm a particular way, shape, or form, if that makes sense. Like, it's just kind of a relief that I know now that other people's stuff is other people's stuff. And if I'm triggering them, it's because there's something inside of them that they need to heal. It's got nothing to do with me anymore. And as long as I'm coming from a place of love and compassion, it's always going to come across in the way that I want it to anyway. So I think now I've seen enough that I know that by my light shining brighter, I've probably now got more evidence of who that is rippling out to now, rather than focusing on who I thought I should be taking along for the ride.
Oh, that's such a great realization. And that's something that we've talked about, is when you really know who you are, you will just attract the people and the circumstances that will continue to support that growth for you and for them. And I think that when we feel like something's missing inside of us, we are looking for love in all the wrong places. So we are chasing to get what we want rather than allowing what we want to come to us. And you literally become a magnet when you're aligned with your true self, because it's such a beautiful energy to be around. And the other thing is that we're not for everyone, and not everyone is for us. So if we discover who we truly are, own that and embrace that and be that, then we are our own soul signature. And there are all these other souls that have a signature that are a match to that. And so I don't believe in one soulmate. You know, a lot of people will talk about, you know, falling in love with their soulmate. I believe that there are so many soulmates, so many different soul signatures that can come together, and that's how we make the world a better place, is by all of these people being who they are. And a big part of being who you are is to accept others as they are. Have you found that that part of the learning has also impacted you and your relationships?
Absolutely. And I think it's definitely something that, you know, we're all guilty of judging at some point in time. And we're all guilty of being frustrated at some point in time at other people. But what I've come to realize is that, you know, we're in control of ourselves and we can do that. But others are coming from their own place of learnings, and they don't know necessarily what I know, and I don't know what they know or what their circumstances are. So in situations that I used to take people as face value, I've kind of stepped back and gone, you don't actually know what their story is or what's going on behind that. And maybe the way that they're behaving is actually, you know, a cry for help or something else. But it's also just sitting in that situation and going, well, it's okay for them to be who they are. And it's okay that I don't have to be friends or get along with absolutely everybody.
Yeah, and we don't have to agree too. I think right now, in this moment in time, it's really important to talk about the fact that people have different beliefs and different opinions. And we're seeing quite a big divide, you know, between people's different thoughts about vaccinations and lockdowns and all of the things that are coming up at the moment. And people are blocking each other and getting angry at each other. And really, we all have a different perception and a different opinion. So I think the motto of live and let live is really, really important. But it's much easier to do that if you're secure within yourself. I think that judgment comes from a sense of insecurity and a sense of feeling threatened. So we feel safer when everything's the same. And this is really flowing into uncertainty at the moment for those of you who are in lockdown, is that if everything is the same and it's predictable and we know what to expect, then we can feel safe and secure. And if everybody agrees with us, then we can feel safe and secure. But part of self-belief is understanding that your true self, the self with a capital S, the inner being, the soul, the universe, the all that is, whatever language you use around it, is creating exactly what you want in mysterious and surprising ways. And so when you trust yourself, you trust life, and you trust other people, and you trust that the people that are poles away from you are not going to come anywhere near you, and you don't have to worry about them. So I think that a lot of worry and fear and judgment is actually a direct reflection of how secure you are in yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. And with everything that's happening at the moment, I think it just amplifies that. But just, you know, it's been interesting because I have been watching even my own opinions around it, and just, you know, just sitting back and going, you know, they're only making decisions based on what they know.
Yeah.
So everybody knows, everybody sees life through a different lens, you know, based on their beliefs, based on their conditioning, based on their experiences. So who's to say that we're right or wrong? Who's to say that they're right or wrong? So I've just been able to definitely release that, and just, it's just really, I suppose, you get to a stage where it's just really neutral. It's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
And I think probably having the self-belief that I do, I can allow others to understand that as well. Like when people have come to me and said, oh, but this person believes that and this person's not doing that, I've kind of gone, look, take a step back, and actually this isn't a time for judgment, because you have your beliefs and they have theirs, and that's okay. There doesn't need to be that.
And the confidence to say that comes from the self-belief, but also attracting the people who are ready to hear that comes from the self-belief as well. And I think that if we align with our true self, once we've discovered the true self and we make that our priority, then our focus is naturally going to shift to what's going well, and we'll create more of that. When we don't feel good about ourselves, we can be defensive. And so then we're quick to judge, we're quick to blame, and we're quick to look for fault in other people. So having said all of that, the difference between being insecure, I mean, I was so defensive, like I could not take feedback. I took everything personally. It was so easy to hurt my feelings. If someone said I was sensitive, which was absolutely true, I would be defensive about being sensitive when it was obvious that I was sensitive because I was defensive. And so it's very funny now as I look back on it, but I completely understand somebody who's in that place now. And we are just easier to be around once we're not like that. But it's because we're okay in our own skin. And when somebody gives us feedback, we don't take it personally, and we don't think that it's about us. So as a result to the changes that you've experienced with your self-belief, and for all of you watching, Hayley and I are not saying that we are just perfect and there is no more growth. This is always an evolving thing, and we're just continually growing in this self-belief. But how have your relationships changed as a result of your increase in self-belief?
They've changed massively, because I think I used to place my security outside of myself, you know, making sure that my husband, Marty, was okay and that he was happy in the relationship and all of that. But now I know, by knowing who I am, being confident in who I am, and having the belief in myself, he's just naturally attracted to me like he was when we, you know, first were together. So it's interesting. We kind of take that, you know, I don't know, we put that outside of ourselves sometimes. We put it outside for somebody else, thinking that if they're happy, then I'll be happy. Yeah. But it's that creating that happiness inside that has that attraction point that keeps, you know, I suppose keeps relationships flowing in terms of that. And, you know, complete different relationship with my kids as well too, like, and coming from a different understanding, I think too. And we're always growing definitely in that space. And I'm definitely not perfect around our boys, but it's so interesting that when you soften and you have that belief in yourself, the ripple effect that then has in their self-belief. And that's probably the biggest thing, is that the insecurities I saw in them are starting to naturally change in themselves, because they're feeding off my self-belief now, which is allowing them to have the belief in themselves.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful flow-on effect. And the other thing, while we're talking about your boys, that I have to share, because it's so exciting, is the reaction that you had when you got pregnant with number 3 and you reached out to me and you were so ready to hear what I had to say. Are you comfortable sharing that story? Because it's so beautiful, and it's the reason that you have such a beautiful third child that came to you.
So our third child is 9.5 years younger than our middle child. And it was interesting because we were always having 3, but then we had 2, and we let our circumstances at the time dictate why we didn't have a third one. And so when our youngest, Percy, came along, he's 15 months now, he magically popped into our life somehow unknowingly, because I still don't know how he got there, but obviously I know how he got there. But it was just like, it was just so meant to be. But in that moment, you know, I rang Tracy and I was like, I know he's meant to be here. I just don't know how he's here. And what do I do now? Like, you know, I was a bit like, I'd starting my coaching and I was, you know, I had all these goals and roles and things that I was doing. And I'm like, what does this mean for me? I was like, you know, on one hand, I was like, this is so natural and he's so meant to be here. And then going, oh my God, what do I do?
Yeah. And can you remember what you came away with after we chatted about that?
Really that I knew, like, because I wholly and solely believe that our children definitely pick us. And I just knew that, I don't know, he was just going to be this intuitive little boy who was meant to be on this earth for some, you know, particular reason. And he happened to choose us for us, you know, like for some reason there was things from us that he needed, or we needed actually from him. What are the point?
Yeah. And that was my big message to Hayley, because I'd watched Hayley go through this growth and I knew that she was in alignment when she conceived. I wasn't there. But I knew that she had spent all this time in alignment. And when we're in alignment, we are attracting the best things. And so it was absolutely for you. And it was so similar to my story when Tegan came in. After I had my girls so close together, it was so busy. I went, I'm done. Like, I know, Damien, I hooked you by saying I'd have 5 kids, but I'm done. 2 is enough. And then one day I was driving and I was out in beautiful nature and I was just on this high, and Tegan dropped in, and I knew he was meant to come here and be in our family. And he's such a spiritual, you know, lesson for us all. And that's the same with your little boy. And it's that next level of trust. And so the self-trust and knowing that life is for you and everything's going to be okay is always going to be growing. And so what I want to say to you, if you find that your belief in yourself or your self-belief wavers, and sometimes you feel good and sometimes you have self-doubt, that's all part of the growth. Is that as soon as a bit of self-doubt kicks in, it's like, great, this is for me. There is another limiting belief I have about myself that I can let go of. I'll give you a really fresh example. So I just received some legal documents, and for those of you who have read legal documents, sometimes we just let it slide that there's something that we don't understand. And I realized that in the past, I wouldn't ask a question because I didn't want to look like an idiot. So I replied all. I didn't just reply directly. I replied to all of the intelligent people on this email group who probably all already understand this document. And I just honestly asked what each of the things meant that I didn't understand. And the email came back within 10 minutes with a simple explanation, and I got it, and it was fine. And I thought, I have come so far because I'm willing to admit that I don't know something so that I can understand something. And we just have opportunities like this all the time. Yesterday, I was talking to a guy who feels dumb because he forgets things. I'm like, I forget things. That's why I have reminders. That's why I have schedules. That's why I have things written down. I said, the brain is like a sponge, and you fill it up and then you need to squeeze it out before you can fill it up again. You can't just overload it and expect to remember everything. But he had jumped to, I'm dumb. I'm uniquely dumb. You know, I'm so stupid because I can't remember these things. Everybody else must be able to. And he was just relieved that I said, I forget things. He felt better as soon as I said that, and he realized that you just need to put mechanisms in place. So it's really interesting with each step that we take as we expand into who we're going to become, that when it's new, it's another challenge. You know, recently you asked me about meeting people where they're at versus being yourself. And, you know, how have you found showing up as yourself in all different coaching situations?
It's such a relief, really, because it's like I don't have to be any different than I normally am every day. And that's received completely different then too. And even just like you were saying about receiving feedback, it's easy to receive feedback too when you understand that everything's working for you. So the feedback that you're getting is actually helping you to the next level of your life. It's helping you evolve. And so when you start seeing that everything is happening to you, good and bad, it's the bad stuff or perceived bad stuff that is just shining a light on the gap where you need to move. And I think, that kind of then it evolves in just being who you are and then allowing that to flow through.
Yeah, it's so true. And it brings up the purpose question, because so many people, come to me saying, I want to find my purpose. And I believe that we all share the same purpose, which is joyful expansion. And so we are going to have the uncomfortable moments because it's the springboard for the expansion. And often it's self-doubt that creeps in at that point where we have this opportunity to expand. And so we retract and hold back because we're too fearful of the expansion. But if we just recognize it for what it is and go, I'm about to get better, go with it, jump on and swing, and, it is like that. And it's just go for it. You might be clumsy. The words might come out wrong. You might dust yourself off and say it better next time, but be you, be unapologetically you, and then apologize if you get it really wrong. But, I think that if our intention is to be the best version of ourselves and to set that example for others, and that we love other people and we want the best for them, then we just need to let go of trying to monitor every move we make in how we're going to do that. And then people will do with it what they're ready for as well. Yeah.
And I think too, that's so important, because I will look back on videos that I did 12 months ago, or even sometimes a few months ago, and I cringe at myself and go, oh, did I really say it like that? That's not how I know that it is. But that's the thing about expansion. Like, everything is always evolving, and all of those people that you see poised and polished that are delivering messages or videos is that they all started somewhere. And, the first video we all probably did, or the first conversation we might have had as we were gaining confidence, we probably, you stumble through it and you get through it. But the way that you, I suppose, build also that belief in yourself is just to keep showing up, realizing that one video or that one thing that you did, probably nobody will remember it by tomorrow anyway. Or it's not really going to be the defining moment in your life. It's just something that you do and you get done, and then you do the next one and you build on top of that. And then you do the next one and build on top of that. And as you keep doing that, your confidence and your belief then actually allows to grow. And I think when it comes to living your purpose and finding your purpose, is that if you don't know yourself, then you won't be able to know your purpose, if that makes sense. We'll continue searching for it rather than it coming to you. Yeah. Which is, I think, where Soul Pleaser was able to open that up for me, because I knew I wanted to be a coach, but I didn't really know what kind of coach. I just knew that, for starters, I was like, I want to talk to people because I love talking and I want to have connection with people. What am I going to do? And then it evolved to being a coach, and then, coming to you, Tracy, to go, okay, Tracy's a coach, And then, but it wasn't really until I actually knew myself that I could have that belief to go and follow what I wanted to do.
And the beautiful thing about that story is that what Hayley and I delved into was her story. And she realized that as she looked back on her story, both as a child growing up, her parents' story, the history behind her, and then her married life story, there was a theme around abundance. And so it made absolute sense for Hayley then to become, an abundance coach, because it was such a strong theme for her, just like people pleasing and trying to be a high achiever and wanting to be liked and get approval was such a big theme for me. And the thing is that it's the easiest thing to do, is to sort of end up going down the track of something that's related to your story. And for those of you who are watching, it doesn't have to be a business. I think it's the big thing people get stuck on, is purpose is not a way to make money. we can have abundance flow to us from all sorts of areas and live on purpose just by loving ourselves and doing what we love. So we've got a question from Rachel. Can you explain that part of the abundance journey a bit more, how you discovered that?
Thanks, Rach. So as a kid growing up, I love that you're laughing and back on camera now. Growing up, definitely money and abundance was something that was few and far between. Like my parents definitely lived in a generation of lack, and they worked hard for their money and they probably chased money. And so what I saw on the farm was a choosing between love and money. And I also saw a lot of like wealth generational patterns that played out. So to the point that I was like, I'm never marrying a farmer. I'm not going to be, not going to be a farmer's wife. I don't want to be on the farm because the farm means this. The farm means struggle and hardship and lack of abundance and all of those things. So, off I trot to uni and come back and then marry a farmer. So, which is, how life kind of has that. But what I then found was that I found that our life was playing out exactly the same way financially as what my parents did and what Martin's parents did. So that whole abundance theme that was going through my life was the lack of it, and just the patterning that I could see that was coming up, and the way that I could trace it back to not only my parents, but their parents. And then understanding that all the decisions that we were making in our farming business were based on that lack of abundance. So that was really holding our business back, which is then what I noticed, obviously, about a lot of farming businesses, and a lot of people in general and other businesses are making decisions based on old thinking. And I was like, I studied business at uni, and I also did my Masters of Accounting. So I was like, why is it that I can have all the tools and I can do all the actions around abundance and money and, I can do those things, but why is it that we're still not getting anywhere financially? Why is it that we're still hitting a ceiling? Why is it that we're in struggle? And so until I learned what I needed to learn, and why, doing Soul Pleaser and listening to a lot of Esther and Abraham Hicks and doing all of that work, what I realized is that what most financial programs and what my financial books and all of the above miss is the fact that they're missing the mindset part of it, or the actual thoughts and feelings of abundance that you don't get taught. And most people will disregard to the side when, it's the feeling of abundance. And, we've talked about self-belief and creating belief. It's around then having that abundance and knowing and feeling and thinking abundant that brings abundance. And that's what attracts money. So it's just, hopefully that answered your question, right?
Yeah, and it's so pertinent for you to explain how you had those limiting beliefs, because so many of us have them. And I remember I was a facilitator for Thinking Into Results before Soul Pleaser came through, and Thinking Into Results was very much about the thinking and changing the beliefs, and that's at the thinking level. But the real shift came when I truly understood that this power, this thing that creates everything, is me. Like, I am part of that. That's not outside of me. That's what I mean by self-belief with a capital S, is knowing who you are and how powerful you are, because it can be the absolute polar opposite to who you think you are. You can think you're small and have no control, and that life is happening to you and you're just at the whim of it. But that will prevent abundance, because then you're relying on something or someone else. Where if you know that anything you want, you can have, then you can just feel good as if you already have it now, and it finds its way to you in really fun ways. And so that level of self-belief allows the abundance to come to you. So Hayley has developed a fantastic business as a result of that. We're both coaches at the Farm Owners Academy, but Hayley also has her own business. Hayley, can you just share what your own business is and what it is that you do?
Yeah. So just adding on to what you were saying first, Tracy, is that so many people have that thought of like, I'm thinking really positive, but then what they're not realizing is why they're thinking positive, they're feeling negative.
Yeah.
And you can't think positive and feel negative and expect a positive result. So it's about, like you said earlier on in our piece, you need to work through the emotions, because you can think really positive, but it's your emotions in turn that basically enhance it. So you can think really positive about health, about life, about abundance, about money, about relationships. But if you don't feel abundant in all of those areas, then abundance won't come. So
true. And really, I think I'm going to change my Instagram handle to say I'm an emotional coach, because when I think about the Soul Pleaser program, really that's what's going on, is we are learning to control our emotions. And when our emotions are out of control, then what we get is out of control. Whereas if we can honor our emotions, notice them in the first place and do something about them and feel better and feel better and feel better, then life just gets better and better and better.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and yeah, the more you feel better, the greater your thinking is, or the more your thinking expands, because it matches the emotions that you're creating. So
yeah. So the name of your business now?
Yeah. So I have a program. My name of my business is still just Hayley Grosser Coaching. And I run a program called Abundant Farmer. So it's basically working with farmers to develop the combination of money mindset, teaching farmers manifestation, and also like management around money, so that you get the whole complete package. It's not just a teach management or just teach mindset. It's the whole package, so that you can learn how to master money, and you can also trust and know how much money supports you, and also around cultivating that feeling of abundance, which is a lot of what it's focused on, obviously, because that's in turn what is the foundation of abundance financially.
Fantastic. And do they just reach out to you and have a call with you to find out about that? Is that how people come to you?
Yes, absolutely. Just reach out and we can catch up for a chat and go from there.
Fantastic. So I will share Hayley's web address for those of you that would like to reach out to Hayley. But in the meantime, does anybody else have any questions that they'd like to ask either Hayley or myself about self-belief or anything that we've talked about today, or anything else? Well, thank you, Hayley, so much. I've absolutely loved this conversation. Thank you to everybody that's come on live, and for those of you who watch the recording. It's just been inspiring to hear your story, and just so exciting to watch you continually expand joyfully.
Thank you. And thanks for having me. And thank you for everyone for coming along. It's been such a joy. And yeah, it's amazing to be able to still tap into your wisdom and knowledge, especially when I need a bit of a top up and a little bit, oh, Tracy, I need help with this. So thank you for that.
My pleasure, always. I'm always here. Once you're a soul pleaser for life. Thank you, everyone. Great to see you. Take care.
Bye.